Shalom, everybody. This is Dave from Universal Truth of Mankind. I am Dave, your host. Welcome to a new series called Buyer Beware. Before we get started, a couple of things I'd like to cover. Number one, please subscribe to Rumble and YouTube. I'm on both under Universal Truth of Mankind. I have instances where Rumble was down, but YouTube was up, and vice versa. So all my videos are on both, and this gives you the greater opportunity to view them. Number two, and most important probably, is please like and share these videos. I'm not asking for any money. I'm just simply trying to get the word out. So, what is this buyer beware? Well, what I do is I take a verse and I try to dig into it a little bit, but not in a traditional sense. When we are given a verse, we read it in English. And we'll say, okay, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. And that's all we think about. And then we're off to verse 2. We rarely go beyond that surface. We're so busy trying to read the passage or read the Torah portion or the passage cited that we don't dig into what we're reading. So with buyer beware, what I do is I take a look at the verse and then I try to dig into it a little more. I look at the Hebrew of it. I look at the usage of the words, what the words are, so on and so forth. I just pick on a couple words at a time or one word within the verse and dig into that just to get a little bit more out of it. I will go to the Mishnah, to Sefta. I will go to the Zohar. I'll go to the Talmud. I'll go to other Midrash Rabbah and other sources as well to try to get a flavor of their thinking. Now, please understand that when I hit these commentaries and these sources, we have to understand most of the time they are nothing but opinions. That's true. A commentary, whether you're talking about a Christian commentary, whether you're talking about a Jewish commentary, whether you're talking about any religious commentary, those are opinions. And think about it for a moment. Would you want to get the information from a new guy who just happened to show up in the last century, the last 10 years, have these great insights and say, "Thus saith this passage"? Or would you want to hear from people who go back thousands of years and get their thoughts on those passages? So I've tried to focus on the earlier from the sages, Perky Avot, and those type of things. What do they tell us? And I just like pull it together and explain the verse. And you have an opportunity to see how I do it in just a moment. So here's the verse we're going to pick on this time. And that's Leviticus 23, verse 27. In the English, let's just read in English and you'll see what I'm saying. Mark the 10th day of the seventh month is the Day of Atonement. It shall be a sacred occasion for you. You shall practice self-denial, and you shall bring an offering by fire to the Lord. Now, we read that real quick. What do we think? Oh man, I have to fast, right? It's what a typical person would say. Oh, fasting, Day of Atonement. And then we skip to the next verse and we start going to verse 28. You shall do da 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 da. But are we really getting the full meaning of that verse? Well, in English, obviously not. However, being that the English is so superficial and and it's not a dimensional language, we have to dig into the original. So here we go. I turned on the interlinear. So we see like verse 27, it says Mark. It says Mark, and then we have an H, which is Hebrew 0389. That's the Strong's Concordance. Now, that is useful when you have some word dictionaries, lexicons that give you a better understanding what those words mean. And that's great. No problem with that. Don't use a Strong's dictionary because all it says is for this number, we translate this particular word into this English word. And you want to avoid that. So we see here the Hebrew word for mark. And then we can go into that and also parts of the speech as well. So parsable. So we can look at this parsable and then get a better understanding of how or what it means. Okay, but there's some other little clues here, and I'll show you that in a moment. We see that for each English word, there's a Hebrew word. So this is not a translation of the Hebrew into English. This is rather saying this is the English word and this is the Hebrew word. This is why we use this particular word in a Hebrew word. Now, if we go to the other words here, you start noticing that there's a lot of English words in between the Hebrew words that have no support. Well, that's unfortunately the nature of interlinear. However, that does not mean we won't gain benefit from it. We have to understand that a lot of times, even the Hebrew word they're citing is not necessarily the word that's in the actual texts. Now, I don't have an example with that here for now, but I just because I don't want to get too far off base. But here we have the Hebrew from right to left. So we have 27 right there. And then there's the word for mark, and then we'll go on. Sometimes these words are out of order to what's in the interlinear, but you didn't know that. And like I said, also, the words can be spelled differently. It's like a root word versus the actual word used. It's okay because you got the parts of speech there, and a lot of it's because of the parts of speech. So here we have verse 27. My picture up there may be blocking the Hebrew text, but it's okay. We're not focusing on that anyway. So let's look at this verse and let's pick a couple of Hebrew words to kind of delve into better understanding of what we're talking about. Let's go down to Day of Atonement. We have Day of Atonement. And we have day, which is Yom, and then the Hebrew word Kippur. So it's Yom Kippur. Now, does Yom Kippur mean Day of Atonement? Well, no, it doesn't. Is that the end result of the Day of Atonement? Actually, it is. So you see where you have a bigger picture result, but rather, if you take a look at the Hebrew, it tells you a little more specific information. Now, I love impregnating English words with Hebrew, and I'll explain that in a moment. So here we have Kippur. Kippur means covering. Well, how does covering mean atonement? And how does that plug into some other words that we're going to be covering in a moment? So let's focus on this for a moment. We're going to go right to left. We have a cuff. That is palm of the hand. We have a palm. The second one looks like a backward C. Now you go to the G. It looks like a G almost. That pay represents an open mouth. Well, what can you do with a palm and an open mouth? We can cover it. In fact, the palm can also mean a restriction. We'll cover more of that in a moment. And then we have a resh, which is the forehead. This is where you plan, where you focus, where you make decisions, where you prioritize things. This is what controls the rest of you. So Yom Kippur is, or I should say Kippur, covering, is the covering of the mouth. It's almost like saying, shut up and start thinking. So you see how you get more depth of meaning. Now, this is not the only way to view this. I'm just showing you, you can deduce some pretty interesting illustrations of the English word, give it more dimension, more meaning if you impregnate it with the Hebrew characters. This is just one example of how I do this. Now let's go on to some more words here. So we scroll down towards the end of the verse, and what do we have? Or the middle of the verse. What do we have here? Self-denial. Okay, well, what does self-denial mean? Well, it means to, okay, in terms of yourself, you shall deny yourself something. You shall restrict yourself of something. Well, remember Kippur, palm on the mouth? Well, it's like you're restricting your voice. You're restricting your eating, your drinking. Sounds like a fast to me. Now, it's interesting. If you take a look at Yoma 76a, I believe it is, the Mishnah is quoted in there. You can read more on it because it does eventually allude to this verse, talks to this verse. But nonetheless, it tells us there's a few things we can't do. We can't, or we should afflict ourselves. How do we afflict ourselves? We don't eat. We don't drink. We don't bathe. Well, I have to admit, sometimes on Yom Kippur, you wish the person next to you did bathe, at least for the day. Um, Oil, don't use oil. Um, Denying like wearing sandals, stuff like that. And these are the physical afflictions we place upon ourselves. Now, I have a little bit of an issue with that. It's not an issue, but I think there's more to this picture. There are some people who eat only one meal per day. I eat 2 meals a day. I also do intermittent fasting quite often. Sometimes I may only have 1 meal a day. I'll fast that long because I just don't feel like eating. So there's benefits to fasting. Doesn't mean don't do these things. That's not what I'm trying to say. I'm trying to say let's get deeper into understanding why we are to do these things. Oh, Yoma, by the way, is in the Talmud. I didn't mention that. So both the Babylonian and Jerusalem. But in this particular case, I'm speaking of the Babylonian Talmud. Okay. So we have and medical reasons, people can't fast or not drink. So there's some people, someone who eats 1 meal a day, missing a meal, is that really a big deal? Probably not. Most of it's skipping the breakfast, lunch, dinner type things, not a big deal. It really is not. So are these really afflictions? Or are they trying to show us there's other things we need to be thinking about? And that's exactly what's going to take place here. And I will show you that in a moment and how that occurs. All right, so let's move down to the word denial. There's the Hebrew word for denial. I'm not going to speak to that word, but I just want to make sure you see that. It means to restrict yourself, to force yourself, things like that. But who's self here? This word right there, right above that icon, is nefesh. Now, what is a nefesh? A nefesh is one Hebrew word of five Hebrew words that represent the soul. This particular Hebrew word for soul, unfortunately, English really has only one word for soul. Sometimes it used the word spirit. Fine. It's okay. So you can say maybe two at best, but Hebrew is five, and it doesn't make distinctions between these things. Nefesh, give you an example. We are taught there's life in the blood, right? And we are not to consume it. Why? Because the blood contains the nefesh. So what does the nefesh do? The nefesh animates the body. If your body is bled dry, you will lack nefesh. And eventually your body would die for the lack of nefesh. So that's what energizes, that's what animates your body. So it's saying for the body, for the lowest soul, deny it for a while, restrict it for a while. Now, is this a restriction for physical? Well, physical is a tool, but it's not necessarily a safe bet of a tool, depending on the person's situation. So, Nefesh being the lowest soul, then let's explore a little bit of the souls above it to make sense of this. The next soul is called the Ruach. Now, a lot of times that is translated as wind or like an unseen force. It's typically our emotions are in that area. And above that one, there's something called the neshama. The neshama is our eternal self, our perfected self. So I hope you're starting to see that what this is, Yom Kippur, or the Day of Covering, is telling us to do is prioritize your existence. We, as students of Kabbalah, are taught that the physical realm is only 1% of reality. The spiritual is 99. But we live lives where our 99% is our physical and our spiritual is only 1%. So what we're being taught here is to reverse that, at least for the day. Explore this idea. I teach. You can go down to my playlists down below, and you will see playlist for meditation 101 and meditation 201, and where I talk about the mind, body, and the soul, or the soul, mind, and body. That's what's being determined here. Priority, the upper soul, your perfected self, your eternal self. You already exist in eternity. You don't need anything to give you life in eternity. You already had that. And that's to trickle down by choice on our part. It does automatically trickle down anyway, but it's a matter of a slightly open door versus a fully open door. So at this point, we got a little trickle going, but we want a full open door and let the light in to transform our mind, which that's where our emotions actually begin, because we're in conflict of what we want and what we're supposed to have. See where the Ruach comes in? The mind here. And then once you make the proper decisions and proper adjustments, what happens? Your body, your actions change. So rather than the body being control of your mind, we are to now forsake the body, go to the soul and say, mind, we have to transform. We need a better life. And that's where we get the soul, the mind, the body orientation placed in the proper order. You wouldn't think you would get all this out of this, would you? Zohar talks extensively about this. I can't give you a reference in Zohar because just read it. Just read. Go from the first page of the prologue and just keep reading. It's the only way to do it. This particular day does not have to be just that day. You can practice this anytime during the year, if not every day. All you're being shown in this is an example of what you should be practicing daily. It's not a holiday where you say, oh, good, I have a day off of work. The next day, well, back to work. No, it's what it's saying is this is where you want to be. This is what you want to do. Now, let me explain one more thing with this, and then we'll close out. The Day of Atonement is a time that an individual can be Yom Kippur, Day of Atonement, is a day that whether you sinned on purpose or not, remember there's sins that are done on purpose, they're evil sins. There are no offerings. If you notice, there's no offerings in the Torah for those who sin on purpose, only for those who have sinned accidentally. Sin, by the way, basically means error. I made an error. My wrong, my bad, as people like to say. Like I said, the Torah doesn't provide for that. However, on this particular Yom Kippur, called by the proper name, is a day that if someone has sinned on purpose, can gain atonement, can at one-ment with the Creator. How? How is this how is this possible? Well, if a person during the year did something wrong and he did on purpose, conniving, stealing, whatever, now that doesn't mean they shouldn't make good on their evilness. They should. But in this particular case, since you're being told to forsake the body, which is where the sin took place, what are we doing here? We're trying to deny ourselves of those urges, putting the soul back in its proper place to change the mind. And now the mind is saying, body, no, I'm not going to do this. And because you're putting things in proper order, you've gained the covering. You've gained the atonement. You see how that works? That's what we're ultimately after. I hope this helps. I hope this was a great introduction to this idea of buyer beware, where now you can look at this verse and go, holy mackerel, I read an entire passage and I didn't get the whole Torah portion. I didn't get anything near to what I just learned from these three Hebrew words. Or actually, two Hebrew words, Kippur and Nefesh, is what we talked about. I hope this helps. Please leave comments down below, suggestions, ideas. If you have a verse, I'll be happy to delve into it. Let me know. Have a great day. Shalom, shalom, everybody.